Greetings, everyone. Friday, May 29th, the last Friday in May. Holy mackerel. Good God. And so I hope you're all ready for a really interesting show. I mean, a whole assortment of things. Some of it's news, and other is history, and some is current. So a lot of stuff, really. And I want to wish my highly esteemed producer, Swami, back in the groove.
Thank you ever so much for, first of all, allowing me to come and play in the Whole Agenda Sandbox. And thank you to Dave and Jer Bear for jumping into the producer chair last weekend. I went through an issue with computer failures, and thankfully the team gathered around and pressed on and put out a great show. And thank you again for the listeners. Thank you to the Revolution Radio team, and thank you to you, Gordon.
Well, thank you. And, I love Jer Bear, and I've known him for years. I just had met David for the very first time just before the last show, but together they did a great job of filling the void left when you weren't there, which was huge. But I guess it was funny that we talked about surge protectors and uninterruptible power supplies. We didn't really get into failing hard drives, but I guess that's what happened to you?
Yeah, somehow. Don't know what exactly occurred, but the hard drive was inaccessible and can't get any of the data off of it. But, oh well. We press on.
Yeah, sometimes if you put your hand on the keyboard, you can feel an unusual amount of heat, and that means that probably it's overheating. And overheating is no good for a hard drive. You can't really put ice cubes on the keys because then the water gets in there and shorts the whole thing out.
Well, thankfully I have a roll-upable sealed rubber keyboard.
Oh, interesting. Well, I had a keyboard that I used so much that my fingers, because I'm like a speed typist, I wore all the black off them and the letters off them down to the white plastic. And then it started getting so hot that even after you turned it off, you could still cook a full dinner for 40 people on the left side of the keyboard.
Yeah.
And I was starting to get burns on my fingers, so I said, well, I guess it's time to get a new computer. It still works great, but, so I haven't used it, and it was, what was it, a Windows 7. I haven't used it in a couple of years or something, but it still works. I can turn it on, and each computer has its own little differences, but with you have a desktop and you just replace the hard drive. Is that what you did?
Well, actually, I found a guy who's an IT professional, and he refurbs older model computers, and he sold me a Dell Optiplex with a fresh install of Windows 7, and it had, Chrome and Skype and Microsoft Office, and he sold me it for $30.
Oh my God, boy, that's lucky.
Smoking deal, and then he went to try to access and retrieve my data off the hard drive, found that he couldn't.
Yeah.
And made me an offer to replace the hard drive, load it up with Windows 7 for me for only $20, and I will now have 2 fully functional systems.
Cool.
As a backup for $50 total. So that's not a bad deal.
No. I like the new HP laptops, and I always hunt around to get a deal on them. And I like the 17.3-inch ones. And the sound is great. I mean, I'm sitting like in front of the desk where the laptop is, but I could walk across the room, and the audio is. I was out at the UFO conference in February, and Lorianne Fenton was like, "You were going to use my computer, but you just have to put your face into the hinge area between the screen and the keyboard." And I said, "Are you kidding? I'm not doing that." She goes, "Well, Dell is great. We have to use my Dell." And I said, "Listen, I just bought a $249 HP laptop at Walmart, and we're going to use that." And we were able to sit 5 feet away, and it blew her mind, I think.
Well, yeah, that was the first time I had heard you was when you were out at that conference, and it sounded great. It sounded fun.
Yeah, so that wasn't even a 17-inch. It was just something I bought to take with me because I don't like to take this one anywhere. I got too much stuff. Wouldn't want to. I've dropped a computer before, and you 99 out of 100 times that you turn it on, it doesn't come on, and one time out of 100 it does, and I still have it, but I'm thinking of taking it outside and having target practice with it.
Well, at least you'll get some use out of it.
Yeah. So the important thing to remember as we begin this show is that this is listener supported, and I'm not kidding about this, what's about to happen. I mean, I'm limited with radio to being able to describe it, but, if people would do what I say, go take your own pictures of the sun, go to zetatalk.com, go to poleshift.ning.com, and research this stuff, you'll see that the world's about to end as we know it. And you can donate to Revolution Radio. You can go to freedomslips.com. You can go to about a third of the way down the page on the right, and you can donate with PayPal, Visa, or MasterCard, debit or credit. How wonderful is that? Now, if you donate at least $50, you get something which I would highly recommend, which is you get a thumb drive with 900 survival documents. And basically, most people know so little about survival, it's ridiculous. And that is so invaluable. Everything from canning to gardening to, just what you can eat and how to do it. And oh, my God. But if you donate $100, you get 35,000 non-GMO, that's genetically modified. So these are not genetically modified. The difference is that when something's genetically modified and they sell you a hybrid seed, it means that if you save seeds from this year's crop and you plant them, they will be mutated next year, and you are not going to get any food. So you need the original vegetable seeds that God put on Earth, and there's 35,000 of them in this packet for $100, and you also get a DVD disc with the 900 survival documents. So what's not to like? And I can't tell you enough, if you're listening to this program regularly and you haven't donated any money, that is really shameful. And you can donate as little as $1, and I wish that you would. So that's all I have to say about that.
There you go.
Now, I know I got a little more to say. I was trying to find your show. Don't you have a show on Wednesday nights on Revolution Radio?
We were not able to do it this week.
Oh,
I had a lingering tech issue, and Jay wasn't feeling well, so...
Okay, well, that explains it. But anyway, I tried the dial to listen with Studio A and Studio B, and they were both quite interesting. One was sort of a roundtable about things possibly extraterrestrial related. And the other was a guy just reading news items nonstop, which I thought very interesting, too.
Now, we're on Studio B on Wednesday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. It's called The Center Path.
Yeah, and that was where the round table was.
Okay.
Well, see.
Now, they plugged in a rerun.
Oh, okay. Well, that explains that, too. But anyway, I got to tell you guys, if you haven't tried it, when you go to freedomslip.com and you have Studio A little box on the left and Studio B on the right underneath it's got the dial to listen, and then you can scroll downward, and then it's got in bigger print the numbers. Well, enter them into your unlimited calling cell phone and listen to the quality. It is outstanding. Can't tell you. Really.
Yeah, Nighthawk invested a lot of money into this new wiring setup that enables Revolution Radio to host up to 1 million listeners at any given time. Wow. So the audio quality has stepped up tremendously.
Well, on that dial to listen, I mean, it's even clearer than the computer. I got to say that. And the computer is pretty good. I'm not criticizing the computer, but when you go to that dial to listen, and look, you don't have to be near a wireless. But if you got a cell phone and you have unlimited calling, which a lot of us do now, that's the way they make these plans, then, that's what you want to do. And then if you want to support the station even more, you can sign up for the archives, and you get all 70 hosts every week. And you go back months and months. So, and then you can download it. You can right-click and choose Save the Link Target, and there you go. It's on your computer, and you can play it for other people, which I'm always saying to people, would you please save these programs and play them for other people? We've got to get the word out there. I can't believe, I was just talking to a friend who went to London for a wedding, and he met over 100 people from around the world, rather wealthy people, and I guess you could say they're the ones that are the most ignorant, or else they don't want to know. But he kept mentioning extraterrestrials and Planet X, and he got a blank stare, and if they made a comment at all, it was maybe something's wrong with him. So, and these are the elite, going to expensive weddings for a week in a castle outside London. That's what they're doing. They know nothing. Think of how advanced you are by listening to this show. How much information you have that money can't buy. But you can use your money to support it. So I really wish you did. Now, I've got a lot of interesting news. And one thing that's really fascinating, I have to mention it. I just discovered it. And you know how I discovered it is on Studio A at 10 o'clock, that guy that was reading the news articles. And I thought, no way. And I looked it up, and yeah, it's real. Scientists have discovered, now they didn't just discover it, this was in 1972, but they've never been really sure what they're looking at. In Okla, which is a town in Gabon, Africa, which is in the armpit on the western coast of Africa, they discovered now you ready for this, a 1.8 billion, with a B, billion-year-old nuclear reactor.
What?
And first, what happened in 1972, and people who are interested in looking this up, you can go to this website called Ancient Code, and it's right there on the front page as far as I know. But it might be a link on the main page, but anyway. 1972. Now, it turns out, of course, you know that China and all these other countries are dying to get their hands on the natural resources in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And you might imagine that there might be some uranium somewhere. Well, it was discovered a long time ago that there's a huge ore body of uranium in Gabon, in this particular place, Okla. And they've been extracting the uranium for nuclear bombs and nuclear plants since a long time. Well, in 1972, as you might imagine, they have radiation detectors, and they know what they're looking for. I mean, they always are checking, like, is this the same uranium? Is it the right isotope? Because you don't want to get into the wrong isotope, and you don't want to get into if it's not, commercial grade. So, and by the way, the government just gave these little 3-inch radiation detectors that look like pagers with a big 3-inch circle on the front to all the people that work of every type and variety who work at the Long Beach and the Los Angeles cargo piers where all the containers come in from Asia. Because, as you know, if you have 100,000 containers moving through every day, it'd be easier to put nuclear material in there and have a dirty bomb, or maybe even a sophisticated bomb, and who would discover it? Well, these devices are really accurate. So, there's a lot of work on this kind of development. Like, they could wear that and walk through New York City and see if there was any radiation anywhere. So that's the kind of effort that's being put into this subject. But back in 72, they had this guy, and it's an open pit mine, and it stretches over quite a distance. I mean, it's a huge area. And this guy was checking the radiation levels of the uranium, and all of a sudden he got a very strange reading, and he realized that he was reading fission products of a nuclear reaction, including plutonium. Well, you know how they say even a stopped clock is right twice a day?
Right.
See, you might imagine, I mean, look at how many scientists go out into nature and look at, like, the spiral of a nautilus shell and say, how can I use that as a structural engineer? How can I use that to expand, so people are taking the clues all the time. But the odds that this happened naturally are so slight as to be laughable. Yet, they've dated it not only at 1.8 billion years old. And how did they do that? Well, they know the half-life of plutonium. So, they realized how much decay you would have to have in order to have what they found, and they realized that an accurate date for this is 1.8 billion years ago. Now, there's no equipment there. It's not like a containment building and lead shielding and copper wires to channel power away. There's no facility to convert the heat from the nuclear reaction into steam and power a generator. But, maybe all that was there and it got taken away. Or maybe it's completely natural. So they've been checking this out for a long time. And in the meantime, the International Atomic Energy Commission has been there. And the United States Atomic Energy Commission has been there. So I don't know when this article came out on Ancient Code. I just couldn't find a date. You'd think that people would always put the author and the date right at the top. Or the date posted. You'd think. You were
right. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now, and it's not. There's nothing there.
Yeah, but at the bottom of that, it says source. But you could put this on the chat maybe, and if people are interested.
Yeah, that's what I'm dropping the link into it.
So, what's interesting is that this is like it could be chance, but in everyone's opinion, it's beyond chance. First of all, it takes place, even though the whole site is a kilometer in size, a kilometer in diameter, it takes place, all of it, within 40 meters, which, is roughly, let's say, 130 feet or less. So, and it was controlled with water from the ground level. That's how it was designed. It was like, now, they can tell that it was operated for 500 million years. I think that's what the figure is. It might be 500,000.
500,000.
500,000, yeah. But think about that. Think about how old our civilization is. Think about when scientists say we came out of caves 10,000 years ago and all that crap they're always telling us, shoving down our throat. Because, otherwise they'd explain that Planet X is here and the Anunnaki took apes and genetically modified the apes with their DNA and got us. So they don't want to explain that. But anyway, this thing has the products of nuclear fission, just like any other nuclear reactor. And the decay, I think plutonium's half-life is about 125,000 years. So in 125,000 years, if it's, let's say, reads 100 on the radiation scale, in 125,000 years it'll read 50. And then in another 125,000 years it'll read 25, etc., etc. So this is extraordinary because, if the Earth is 4.5 billion years old, who in the hell was building and operating a nuclear reactor 1.8 billion years ago? Now, with all the continents coming together and separating and meteors falling, and if you guys are familiar with this, they say that it's a phenomenal amount of tons of dust falls on the Earth every day. But here is this open pit nuclear fission reactor, not fusion, so don't get too excited. Fission. Someday we hope to figure out fusion, because fusion would make hydrogen and possibly water as a byproduct. There would be no radiation. But they haven't agreed on whether that's even possible, and if it is, how to do it. Although, I can tell you right now, there's a lot of money being put into that for the last 50 years, and nobody's figured it out yet. There have been claims, but nothing that resulted in a fusion reactor. So, this is all theory. So this is a fission reactor. But who would have installed this and built it using natural features in a way where, and the interesting thing is that you need a certain density of uranium ore to have a reaction. And the density of the ore in this supposed nuclear reactor is 3%, which is not enough to sustain it. So how was there enough fissionable materials in one place to operate and create plutonium as a byproduct. And there's other isotopes that were created. I'm not going to get into that. But the thing is it's a very interesting subject because, it's sort of eye-opening. Like, when I talk about what the Zetas say, they're really only going back to the Anunnaki period. And the Sumerians say the Anunnaki came to Earth about 1 million years ago after ruining Mars for a long, long time, possibly 5 million years, and draining all the water down into the inner crust to wash gold. Idiots, they didn't have pumps or power plants. And I don't know if there's any fossil fuel on Mars, but probably not. So they just figured the easiest way to sluice the gold, to wash the gold out of the soil in the open pit mines, which the NASA satellites have photographed beautiful open pit gold mines on Mars. So you can go look at Mars anomalies and you can see open pit gold mines that look exactly like copper mines in Arizona. I mean, just like copper mines and gold mines in Colorado. So they came here, 1 million years ago, and about 400,000 years ago, after they were mining gold for 600,000 years, they decided to create us. And, of course, they didn't want us to be realizing that they weren't God. They wanted to tell us that they were God and have us believe that. So they made parts of our system defective and mutated. And that includes the part of your brain where you recognize you're an eternal soul, and the pineal gland. So that was intentional on their part. So they invented us 400,000 years ago, and that's why anthropologists and genetic scientists say all humans, every human on Earth, is descended from one woman in Africa. Well, you know who that woman was. She was an Anunnaki. And if you read Zeta Talk, you see it was a laboratory on the moon. Because they'd come out with a new model. They came out with the Neanderthals, and they all had digestive problems and diarrhea, and they were too stupid. So they abandoned that and came out with what we call modern man, Cro-Magnon man. And then they go, well, they're smart enough to be good slaves, but not smart enough to realize that they're eternal souls. So anyway, but all along, other extraterrestrial races have messed with the Earth. I mean, there isn't any point in the Earth's history where some extraterrestrial race didn't take an interest in the Earth and bring things here as presents, whether it was algae or plants or animals or insects. All kinds of stuff's been going on. And even after the Anunnaki came, there are other unselfish extraterrestrial races that came and modified DNA to step it up. So there would be at least some people walking around who knew they were eternal souls and would realize the whole scenario of life in the universe. So, the fact is, could there have been somebody putting a nuclear reactor on Earth 1.8 billion years ago? Well, clearly the answer has to be yes. Because if you've read that book, Forbidden Archaeology by Michael Cremo, which is, I'm not trying to put him down, but I think it's the only good thing he ever did, because I've heard him on other interviews. But anyway, just to give you an example, they were mining for gold north of San Francisco, and they were drilling into granite. Now, it was a granite mountain, and the reason why they do that is because frequently gold, as the stone is pushed deep in the earth and heated, and then it rises back up and cools, there'll be gases with different metals, and gold will condense into the crevices, which most people don't realize. When you look at granite, you think, well, that's solid stone. But if you ever have a granite countertop and you spill some olive oil on it, you'll find out it's not smooth stone. It's porous, and it will stain. So the gold would seep, the vapors would seep into the quartz and then cool and form gold, and that's called wire gold. And they love to find that because all they do is dig the granite out, crush it, blow the dust away, and there's a whole bunch of, it looks like a bunch of wiring all bundled together of various sizes, all linked together in like a Brillo pad, and that's gold, pure gold. So they were looking for wire gold, and they got in about half a mile in this tunnel. And guess what they discovered? Well, first of all, you have to understand there's no granite on Earth that's younger than 500,000 years, 500,000 years. And some of the granite is 500 million years old. They're boring into the granite, especially most river valleys are 500 million years old, because that's where the granite came from before it was pushed down, reheated, cooled, and came back up. So they dig in, and there, encased in granite, perfectly with no flesh on it, is a modern human skeleton. So it's a wonderful book to read. It's huge. It's like you could spend, if you're a slow reader, this is like a 2-year project reading forbidden archaeology. But time after time after time, interesting stuff's been found. And the archaeology and the science of archaeology and the big universities like Harvard go, oh, that doesn't fit into our story, bury it. And and the first one to do writing like that was Charles Fort, and that's the origin of the phrase Fortean, that something is Fortean, which means sort of paranormal. And he went through and found 3 million newspaper articles of falls of red rain, falls of frogs, falls of fish, just inexplicable stuff. Blocks of coal that were opened up and there was a living frog in it. Coal that was opened up and there was a metal screw in there. Now, you know how old coal it must be. So he wrote it all up into a book, and then his house caught on fire and everything burned. Did Charles Fort go out in the yard and shoot himself? No. He went out and accumulated all those same articles together and wrote this book, The Book of the Damned, and it's stuff that science has damned because it doesn't fit into the picture. So we don't know yet the story about this nuclear reactor, but I heard it on Revolution Radio, and I looked into it, and I thought, boy, people are going to be interested in this. So, did they come and use it? Did they have steam generators, and they operated it, and then when they left, they took all the Zetas have said many times there's no extraterrestrial equipment on Earth. Meaning that some previous ETs came here and installed or used something that it's left it here. They said they came and got it, so it doesn't interfere with our free will, because if you want to be stupid and skeptical, you have every right. This is the third dimension. It's the free will dimension. You can be as stupid and as uninformed as you would ever hope to wish to be. This is it. This is your chance. Go around with a box over your head. Now, I heard a really interesting news story that I told Swami earlier, but research shows that people who are cynical and skeptical do not earn as much money as people who are open-minded. Now, why would that be? And you can see that open-minded people are willing to work together with other people with other ideas to come to a common understanding of what the truth is. Whereas cynical and skeptical people live in a box. They're not going to get out of the box. They might peek out of the box. I mean, I worked for a guy once, and people said, "Do you know how he started his career?" And I said, "No." And they said, "Well, there was an office window, and then an office, and then inside that was another office with a window opening up to the first office. And when somebody would come in, he would very gently pull the door back of the inner office to peek and see if anybody was out in the front room to buy something. It was a box company, actually." And he would have a panic attack, and then he wouldn't come out to service the customer. I don't know how he. Sometimes when I see him, I kid him because I worked with him for a while. I said, "Yeah, aren't you dead yet?" But I know that's cruel. But anyway, so now we get to the Muhammad caricature art contest tonight.
I was curious, did anything happen with that?
Now, I have a friend who lives in Phoenix and was giving me the updates, including right before the show. Now, he only told me that it was supposed to start at 9:15 Eastern Time. Everyone was supposed to meet at Denny's. Now, what they were doing is, this is the Freedom Group that had the art contest in Texas, when 2 people from a Phoenix mosque showed up in Texas with guns to go in and kill everyone at the art exhibit. They had a contest, and somebody won the best Muhammad cartoon, which, of course, as you know, if you know anything about the Muslim religion, is against the Quran completely. And if somebody does a caricature, they need to be killed immediately because they're an infidel, and that puts you on jihad, where you go to heaven and get 72 virgins. So, They showed up from Phoenix, from their mosque in Phoenix, 4 miles from my friend, and they went to Texas, and the local police had an idea that this was not going to be a good thing to have this art exhibit. So there was a cop outside, and he saw them drive up and get their assault rifles out, and he killed them both on the spot with a pistol at a huge distance. Thank God there's people like that. And they said he always was a good shot. Well, I guess so. You know, most people couldn't hit anything at 50 feet, let alone 50 yards or 100 yards with a pistol. But anyway, so what they announced to taunt Muslims, and they're selling, he told me they're selling, he saw the t-shirts they're selling, it says frig the I'm changing the words. Yeah, frig Islam. So anyway, it's supposed to be a biker group that is putting on this caricature group and doing it in Phoenix in front of the mosque where these two guys were from. So they agreed to meet at Denny's, and I guess Denny's heard about the shootout in Waco, Texas, so they closed for the day when they heard that. But yeah. But anyway, supposedly all the bikers were supposed to meet at Denny's and then go from there to the mosque at 6:15. So I don't know what happened beyond that. But the announcement included, bring your guns, you'll probably need them. So you could see where this kind of stuff is going.
Yeah, I'm gonna check Drudge right quick just to see if anything has come across the wire on that event.
Yeah. So the priest or whatever they call him at the mosque, he goes, those two were such good boys. I never thought they would do something like that. The two that went to Texas to kill everybody and didn't get the chance because the policeman shot them both to death. He goes, I thought they were good boys. Well, my friend said there was never another comment about it. So it begs the question, how many other people like that are in this mosque? So then my friend decided to look up how many mosques there are to find out the exact location of this particular mosque, how many mosques there are in Phoenix. And he said, it's unbelievable. You would not even begin to imagine how many mosques there are. Now, of course, when Moses came down from the mountain, well, the Jews were leaving Egypt and heading for the Promised Land. He had the 10 Commandments. Now, people don't understand that this was not something from God. Jehovah, the evil Anunnaki pretend God, gave that to Moses. But is there any history on these 10 Commandments? Yes, there is. You look in the Sumerian tablets going back hundreds of thousands of years, and you see that the Sumerian people were not educated to read and write. And they had to have a simple law that everyone could understand. And so they had 10 commandments. And everyone had to memorize them, and that's how you had to live your life. So one of those commandments was, you shall not make a graven image of God. Well, look at the Easter Island statues. Maybe the Anunnaki, that's them. That's how ugly they are. If they thought, we don't want anybody making any pictures of us, or maybe they thought, well, there's we're going to change who's God every so often, so we don't want any pictures because then people are going to go, what, are there two gods? So this could be very confusing, and we don't want people to realize that we're not God, and we don't want people to realize that they're equal to any of us, so no images. So that's where this started. Now along comes Muhammad in 600 AD, and he puts it into the Quran that you are not to have any graven images of God. So that's where this came from. Now, personally, I think that's stupid. But on the other hand, look, if they want to feel that way and do that, I don't see why it's very smart to go around throwing this in their face by doing cartoons of Muhammad. I don't know what you think about that, Swami, but it just doesn't seem like a good idea.
No, not particularly. But in the tradition I represent, we just allow each to do as they choose, and
right.
Those will self-sort into the correct traditions based on their understanding and their karmic level of development, and we just let each be as they are and try to stay out of conflict. That's our thing. I'm looking through the
You don't see anything in Drudge?
BBC 15, and it seems things got a bit heated, but no shots fired.
Well, that's good.
No one bleeding apparently, but certainly some clashing in that.
Now, this same friend told me, he goes, your governor in Maine, LePage, who's a Republican, he goes, he seems to be against concealed weapons. He's doing something I read about in California. He's against the concealed weapons law. And I said, well, I can't believe that, because Maine has had a concealed weapons permit for 100 years, and just about everybody in Maine is fully armed, and we have an open carry law. So you can walk around with a loaded gun or a loaded rifle, or not just hunting weapons, but assault rifles. You could have like a 100-round drum clip on your assault rifle, and it can be fully loaded, and you can walk around with it. But if you cover it with your jacket, all of a sudden it's concealed, and you better have a concealed weapons permit, or else you have just committed a felony. So that's the way the law works. So it just so happened Janet was listening, and she was reading today's paper, and it says that the legislature in Maine voted to get rid of this concealed weapons permit, to have everyone to have everyone in Maine be allowed to carry a fully loaded firearm without a permit. You don't need to go get a permit.
Wow.
As I was in a restaurant the other day, and I was telling Janet, Maine is an open carry state. I could come in here with a loaded handgun in a holster and or a rifle, and that wouldn't do anything. But if I put a jacket over it, I better have a concealed weapons permit.
Right.
So the Maine legislature just decided to vote to, of course it has to pass the House, but it was the Senate of the legislature, voted to pass no concealed weapons permit necessary. You can carry a loaded gun anywhere you go. Now, Maine has had a lot of people with guns for more than 100 years, and we don't have any gang shootings or shootouts or any of that kind of stuff. What we do have is the typical stuff where a husband, his wife leaves him with the kids, and he hunts her down, kills her, kills the kids, then shoots himself. So we have that, but every state has that. These are the end times. People don't know how to deal with rejection or they have no respect for themselves. So what makes you think they would ever respect somebody else? And, a lot of people think, well, he's abusive, but I'll have kids with him and I'll marry him. Well, that's never a good decision. So anyway, it turns out that California has a really obtuse concealed weapons permit, and LePage joined with 21 other politicians and wrote an amicus brief to the Federal Appeals Court, saying they should just toss out the California concealed weapons permit, so that therefore everybody can carry a loaded weapon wherever they go. So now some people, especially liberal Brady gun regulating group, they really do not want this to happen. But, in World War II, Yamamoto, the great admiral of the Japanese Navy, very close to the emperor, he said, look, we cannot invade the United States because almost every single person in the United States has a gun, and we would have to fight every single one of them one at a time, and we could never win. And that was why the United States was not invaded by Japan. So think about it. What kind of a world do you want? The Second Amendment says that you have a right to bear arms. It doesn't say only cap guns and BB guns. It says, and to have a militia. And the militia is, to protect, because that's what the whole Constitution is about. You have an overbearing, overreaching government, and people can't take the oppression, and then they stand up for themselves. So, of course, now this gets into the whole issue of martial law and what would happen if people didn't like what Washington does. Well, a lot of people already don't like what Washington does. But if you've been listening to the show, I've been talking about Operation Jade Helm, special forces in 11 states. The New Madrid Fault is going to go off this year. It's going to trigger the San Andreas Fault, and there's going to be a lot of looting. So, I have a very special friend named Nikki Thetzi. She's a very well-known psychic. She's living in California right now. She's like a butterfly. Who knows where she'll go next, but she's advanced on levels that other people who are interested in spirituality and growth can only imagine. And I've known her for a couple of years now, and she's always right on. And I sent her a picture that was taken last Thursday. I mentioned on my last show this picture that shows Planet X to the right of the sun. Now, normally, being to the right of the sun, you can't see it because the sun is lighting the other side of it. But the tail of Planet X is 15 million miles long, stretched out towards Earth. And Planet X is probably 30 million miles from Earth. So there's a big cloud of red dust, and the sunlight hits that, and then some of it reflects back onto the dark backside of Planet X. And by that I mean just before the new moon, when the moon is near the sun, and you go out during the day and you know the moon is right next to the sun, you can take all the pictures of the sky you want. You're not going to get a picture of the moon. That's because there's no tail of dust coming off the moon reflecting light back onto the dark side of the moon. But here we do have a tail, we do have light reflected, and there is the picture. And this is taken by Alberto. It's on poleshift.ning.com. Anyone can go look at it. And all the people that have been watching Planet X over the years and the pictures of two suns realize that for a daytime picture, Planet X looks bigger than it ever has. And that means that probably Pole Shift is not that far away. Definitely not this year, but not that far away, meaning maybe next April. So if you're thinking, well, I'll get my GMO and non-GMO seeds in a year and a half or something, forget it. You're thinking, well, I'm going to cash out my 401k. Forget it. Do you realize the economy went down almost 1%, the gross national product in the last quarter? That's the worst it's been since the 1940s. So, you see these commercials on TV with, what's his name, Rand Paul's father, Ron Paul, saying the economy's about to crash. Well, hello, baby. Yes, sir. That's what's about to happen. So anyway, I sent the picture to Nikki, and she looked at the picture, and she went to sleep, and she called me the next day, and she said it felt like Nibiru, Planet X, had fallen right on her chest. And she had a glimpse of what's about to happen, and she goes, it's very, very, very soon. The New Madrid fault first.
I don't know if you can hear me, Gordon, but your voice is breaking up. We're having a bit of trouble with your Skype. We'll see if it passes.
You want to call me back? Hang up and call me back? Hang up and call me back, or is it got good again? I think I'm going to hang up, and then you call me back.
Okay, there.
Oh, it's better?
Yes.
Okay, so Nikki Thetzi felt that Planet X had landed on her chest, and she saw the New Madrid fault going off very soon, triggering the San Andreas fault very soon. Well, guys, the San Andreas fault movie just came out tonight, and Drudge had a big headline: San Andreas ready to rip in theaters and in real life. And that is true. And so she said that she saw rioting. Now, you got to understand, the San Andreas Fault is 800 miles long. It starts in Mexico and it ends just on the other side of San Francisco. And it's kind of funny. We looked it up. There's a map of it. It's to the east of all the coastal cities. And there's a series of state parks all along the fault, and this site that we were on said you should take your RV and start down on the Mexican border and go right up the San Andreas Fault, camping and enjoying the scenery the whole way. It's a beautiful thing. There's a string of state and national parks the whole way. Well, there's half a volcano in Mexico, and guess where the other half is? Just south of San Francisco. That's how far the fault has moved. The west side of this fault is moving north, and the east side staying there. So I don't recommend that anybody take an RV and decide to go on vacation on the San Andreas Fault, which that's a highly amusing idea, really. So, but anyway, she said the president will declare. Now, she's not limited to what somebody tells her she can say. She sees it and she calls it the way she sees it, and she says all the major cities in California on the coast are going to have looting and rioting, and the president will declare martial law. So, there you go. That's what's about to happen. And I consider her an excellent source. Now, some of you who don't know anything about her, you can look her up on the internet. She has websites and all kinds of stuff. It's hard to get in touch with her, though, because she's always in a different location. But anyway, she's much sought after. People are always calling her up and trying to get her to solve their problems when she's trying to figure out where the quest is going to move to and where the chakras are going to be and how she can anchor them. So she's doing like ultimate outer dimensional work at night while you're sleeping and having digestion problems and wondering if you're going to get a good night's sleep. She's roaming the earth on another dimension, trying to figure out where to anchor chakras of the earth on the new geography so that it's a positive influence for everyone. Now, she says that people who die in a moment of anger and fear are trapped here on earth. And that the best thing you can do is that if you're dying is to not be fearful and not be angry. Instead, to think of love and kindness. And if there's anyone around that you can comfort and help, to do that. And those people who die in a moment of love and kindness will be free to move on to other levels and other places. And those who are brought to fear and anger in their last moments will be trapped here. So there you go. And I think you would agree, wouldn't you, that your moment, that your desires and your view of life is going to influence what happens to you after life, after you finish this life.
Well, yeah, that's within this Swami's tradition. That's how your placement within the afterlife will be at whatever frequency level resonates with you at the time of your departure from the body.
Right.
And then you get to come back and reincarnate again. And
well, so that's why you really don't want to be trapped here if you don't need to be. But if you get into some cycle of anger and fear, guess what? You're gonna be. It's like being trapped. You built a cage for yourself. So, now, I was watching the History Channel. I've told you all that every Friday they started showing all the ancient alien shows. I think there's 80 of them all together, and I now have recorded all 80. But tonight they had this show. It's the MUFON Files, Hangar 1, and they had this really interesting story because the San Andreas movie, all the reviews are excellent. They say it's a blockbuster. It never ends. It's gripping, and so everyone should go see it. I mean, I saw review after review of all these movies opening up, and they're all a bunch of crap. This movie has 5 stars out of 5. So Nancy Leader called me today, and she said, I just went to see San Andreas this afternoon in Wisconsin. Would you like a review of it? And I said, yes, I would, because that doesn't bother me at all. I mean, we all know what the story's about. I mean, well, it's going to ruin it for me? Never. So she said, after enjoying the whole thing all the way through, that it was not only scientifically but prophetically accurate, and that yes, the Hoover Dam is going to break and collapse. First, it's going to stop working and hold all the water back, and then all of a sudden it is going to break, and Las Vegas is going to be flooded like nobody's ever thought possible. And of course, an important moment in the movie is where Paul Giamatti has a computer and he's getting these electromagnetic pulses. He's right on the dam. And he gets these pulses and he goes, the dam's going to blow, get off the dam. And he's running around holding his laptop open, looking at these pulse signals. And I don't know what he was doing. He didn't have a coil of wire. He wasn't, maybe he was on the internet with a AT&T or a cell phone or Verizon or Sprint or, US Cellular. I don't know where he was getting this. But wouldn't you like to have an app like that that goes, oh my God, look at those electromagnetic pulses. We've got to run, run for your life. So I don't know where he got that. But anyway, he's saying run for your life, and then the Hoover Dam breaks. So that's true, says Nancy, and that's in ZetaTalk, and you can look at it, the future of Hoover Dam. You can do a search on ZetaTalk, just enter Hoover Dam, and there it is. So I was watching Hangar 1 tonight, and they had this great story that you're just going to love. It was May of 1953. A saucer crashes in Kingman, Arizona. The NBC team, the nuclear, biological, and chemical team, comes out from the Army to get recover the saucer and get aliens if there are any. Well, there's 2 injured and 2 healthy. So they're told don't endanger the recovery mission by anything you do with the aliens. Just if you can, and you don't know if your medical treatment will kill them, so just bind them up and get them out of there. So then they had the question of what are we going to do with the saucer because it's on the wrong side of the Colorado River. So they're like, well, we're going to put it on this M25 tank moving truck. And so they get it up on the truck, and they cover it with a tarp, and they're all set to drive across the Hoover Dam. And then they realize the sign says weight limit 1 ton. And this truck with the saucer weighs 40 tons. So they're like, ooh, this is not good. So they back up and they go, and this is in the middle of the night, don't you love it, in May of 1953. So then they go, well, how are we going to get this thing across the river so where we can get to the highway? So then they go, well, if we go far enough upriver and put a barge in, we can drive the tank-moving truck with the saucer on it onto the barge. We can string huge, heavy steel cables across the river on either side of the barge and pull the barge from one side of the Colorado to the other. Seemed like a great idea. They're doing this all under cover of darkness in one night. So, huge amount of people involved with this operation. So, they get the truck with the saucer on the barge, and they're pulling it, and all of a sudden the cable breaks. Now, the 40-ton tank-moving truck with a saucer on it is drifting downstream towards the Hoover Dam. And it bangs right into it in the middle of the night in May of 1953. And like everybody's holding their breath, oh my God, is this thing going to crack the dam? And is the saucer going to be washed downstream? And what is the generals going to say if people find out there was a saucer we just recovered? So it just sort of bobs around on the backside of the dam, and they're like, phew. So then they get some more cables, restring them, and use other cables to pull the barge back upstream. Of course, that's a lake there, so there wasn't a big current, but there is a big current right near the dam, and there is some current. They pull it back up to where the cables have been reinstalled, and they successfully pull it across and drive it up the mountain onto a highway, and that's how they got it out of there. But I thought that was kind of an interesting story that also linked to the Hoover Dam, showing the Army at work for your interest, right? Yeah. So am I still on, Swami, or somebody? What is that?
Well, it's breaking up quite a bit, but I am actually fearful that if we disconnect and attempt to reconnect with you, we won't get you back at all.
Well, you will on my cell phone if you want. Would you like to continue on the cell phone?
That's just the situation. Ever since you went into your friend the psychic and her reaction with Planet X appearing to be on her chest and that, it's been breaking up real bad. It'll come through pretty good for a little bit, and then it'll break up.
So do you want to continue on the cell phone?
I do not know that it will be improved by simply hanging up and bringing you back.
Yeah, but can you call me on the cell phone? That'll work.
If we don't get you back at all, we don't have a show.
Right. Well, do you want to call me back on the cell phone? Cell phone. Call me on the cell phone. Can you call me on the cell phone, dear sir?
Okay, I will do that, everybody.
Okay, hold on. I'll be back.
Bye.
I'll be back on AT&T cell phone. So I don't know where would you say, did anybody hear what I said about the Kingman, Arizona crash in May of 53?
Honestly, Gordon, I think it would be worth the effort to
Okay.
go back to speaking of New Mexico, because that's where it began. When you were talking about your psychic friend feeling Planet X on her chest, it was right at that point it began unbelievably breaking up. So if you want to go back to that,
okay.
It would be
so everyone got the fact that Hangar 1 had a story tonight on the History Channel about a saucer on a barge crashing into the backside of the Hoover Dam. Everybody heard that, right?
I believe so.
Okay, good. Well, Nikki Thetzi, I sent her the picture of Planet X next to the sun that was taken not yesterday, but the week before on Thursday from Italy. And she went to sleep thinking, okay, nothing particular. And she felt like Nibiru, Planet X, landed on her chest. And she all of a sudden had this huge insight that the New Madrid Fault is about to go off. And the devastation is going to be incredible, but that's what's going to trigger the San Andreas Fault. And this is going to be not the ultimate big one, but huge. And it's going to be in the 800-mile length from Mexico up to the other side of San Francisco. It's going to be total devastation, and there's going to be looting all along the whole length of California up to the other side of San Francisco. And President Obama is going to be declaring martial law, and the shooting and the looting and the terrorism is going to be just incredible of the population not knowing what to do. And martial law is going to have to be declared in California for that. Now, I've already said that probably martial law is going to have to be declared in the New Madrid Fault because there's maybe, I don't know how many people in California, what is it, 25 million, 40 million, I'm not sure. But the New Madrid Fault area is another 50 million people. So they all have brick houses and cheap frame houses, and the jolts are going to be big enough. We're talking 8s and 9s. This is not 10s, but this is 8s and 9s. Big enough to collapse house after house after house, apartment building after apartment building. So that's what the special forces were deployed for, because the U.S. Geological Survey, and this is from Nancy Leader in the Zetas, she accepted the question, she posted it on the Ning, and it will end up on ZetaTalk.com. But that's what the special forces are there for. It's because the bridges are going to come down. Everybody's going to be in chaos. And as I've said before, it depends on how the president handles it. If everybody thinks, oh my God, this is martial law, it's us against the government, like they probably will in Texas, there's going to be a war breaking out in Texas. But if the president handles in a way, well, if we all work together and help each other, and people take that attitude, the attitude of the golden rule, if they take that attitude, then this is going to go a long way to, instead of getting your gun out and going out and shooting, to people helping each other. Now, people are the first reaction is, oh my God, if we don't have any food, we're going to have to go loot the grocery store like everybody else, or else we're not going to have any food. So this is why it's so important for you to plan ahead for this stuff. So when it happens, you're not scared to death and fearful that, you know what you're going to do. You know what it takes to survive. You've taken care of it for yourself. But people who live on the San Andreas Fault and west of it, you're playing with fire. There isn't any way to describe it any better than that. You are in the wrong place at the wrong time. So, that's what Nikki Thetzi said. This is real. She goes, Gordon, you have it exactly right. This is real, and it's about to happen. And the chaos and the martial law and the shooting and the looting and every crime you can imagine is all going to happen at once, because people are going to go, oh my God, this is the end. What am I going to do? And they're not going to think about their neighbors, their friends or their family. They're going to just go out and think, well, I've got to take care of myself. And that's exactly where we went wrong all along. And in that vein, we have the news of Dennis Hasset. Now, he was the Speaker of the House of Representatives in Washington for 8 years during the Bush administration. He was the third man in line to be president, and It turns out that he was a wrestling coach in Chicago suburbs back in 1961, and whatever he did, there's somebody who was injured or hurt by him, and I can just imagine. I mean, it doesn't take much imagination to realize that probably he was a pervert and he did something to a young boy because he was a wrestling coach. So now he's married. He's a lobbyist for a big Washington, D.C. law firm. He's not a lawyer, but he gets a huge salary because of his connections. He can put people in touch with other people, and so he gets paid with that. Well, this person who was injured didn't make this claim from 1961 till just now, but the claim is that he wanted $3.5 million, or else he was going to turn in Dennis Hasset. So Dennis Hasset started going to the bank and withdrawing $50,000 at a time. So I live on Social Security, so I can't even imagine going to the bank 70 times to get $50,000 cash out each time, and then send 50 or 100,000 at a clip to this guy in Chicago, or else he's going to tell the world what he knows about Dennis Hasset. It would seem to me that if he really did that, he would have been a lot smarter to just announce to the world that he had harmed somebody back in 1961. But instead, he decided to pay the money. So then the bank got concerned. Why the hell is he withdrawing $50,000? So then the FBI was called in and said, why are you withdrawing $50,000? And instead of telling them the truth, I'm being blackmailed. He said, I don't trust the bank, so I'm withdrawing the money for myself. Well, it didn't take long for the FBI to discover that that wasn't true at all. Well, there's one thing you want to do to stay out of jail is tell the truth to the FBI. You do not want to lie to the FBI. Well, that's what they've arrested him on, is all kinds of things, corruption, money laundering, lying to the FBI. None of this is probably as serious as what he did to this other person, but that was, how long ago? 50 years ago? So would he really be charged for that now? Would it be embarrassing if he announced it? Yes, but that's the choice he made. Now, so that's breaking news these days. When is it going to come out what he did to this other person? And who in the hell is this other person? So everyone's hanging on every word for that news. And then you have, and I know you're going to love this because, we all saw the race riots in Ferguson and Baltimore, and we wondered, is anybody financing this or paying for it? Because the media wouldn't drop it. It seemed to play up the race angle. Reverend Al Sharpton flies in. People demonstrate. People are shot. There's rioting. The city is burned. All this news keeps repeating itself. Well, somebody asked Nancy Lieder if there was more to this story. Now, some of you are aware, and the rest of you are not aware, that a media group was hired by the same group that did the Muhammad caricature contest in Texas and had the demonstration tonight in Phoenix. That group, somehow, a small group of people that they're just advocating freedom of speech. Blah, blah, blah. Somehow they came up with enough money, and I mean millions of dollars, to pay the Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Transit Authority to put gigantic caricatures of Muhammad on all the city buses and all the Washington subways. So that's like pouring gasoline all over Washington, D.C. and then lighting a match, because what's going to happen is that's going to force ISIS and the like to move to the United States to start committing acts of terrorism. Now, who would want that, and why would they do it? Well, it turns out, because Nancy took this as a question, that George Soros, the left-wing billionaire, gave $33 million secretly through different organizations to finance the rioting in Ferguson, Baltimore. He's trying to get something going. Reverend Sharpton flew into Cleveland today. I'm not sure what happened with that. But he's the one who gave the money to this freedom artwork group to put this on the posters. Well, they were going to have an anti-Palestinian poster series on New York subways and New York buses. And it came out what that was going to be before it happened. And there was such an uproar that the Metropolitan Transit Authority in New York withdrew the whole ads. It said, well, we're losing $14 million by turning this down, but this is just going to start open religious warfare in New York, and we don't need that. So thank God they refused this poster campaign. Maybe Washington will do the same. But the interesting thing is that George Soros is an extreme left-wing billionaire, and he's financing these racial riots. Well, why is he doing that? Well, I've already said that the billionaires want President Obama to declare martial law because they imagine the only way to protect their mega mansions, and by the way, construction just started on a $500 million house in Los Angeles. I mean, the obscenity of this level of consumption is just mind-boggling. So these billionaires, the left-wing Bush and Cheney crowd, want martial law to protect their mega mansions, their businesses, and their banks. And the left-wing billionaires want the same thing. So here you have the fact they're on the left wing and the conservative right wing doesn't really matter, does it? What matters is that they're all billionaires and they want the president to declare martial law. Well, he said he will not do that. He has no intention of protecting the wealthy with their mansions and their banks and their businesses from the crowds. And, no matter how you count it, you're just not going to get that out of them. But what Nikki says is there are going to be riots in California up and down the now she lives in at the moment in North Hollywood, and she's at the Joshua Tree UFO conference this weekend, so she's not even in Hollywood, but she's right on the San Andreas Fault, because there's a big UFO conference there, a spiritual conference in Joshua Tree today, tomorrow, and Sunday. Excuse me. So, but at least she's not going to be in any buildings. It's all camping sites and tents. But anyway, she has said there's going to be martial law in California. So I'm just warning you that that's what's coming. But how you react to it is up to you. Now, you can run out and buy guns. I mean, I told one of my neighbors, I said, do you own a gun? He goes, no. I said, well, I can tell you what's going to happen, and I'm not saying that you want to shoot anybody or that you will need to, but what if you do? What if some people come to your house and want to come in and rape your wife, loot your house, and kill you? Are you going to say, wait a minute, while I drive 2 hours to go buy a gun and the gun store is closed and you can't buy anything anymore? I said, not really. I said, I don't understand why you don't want a gun to protect your wife and kids. Now, some people may disagree with me on that, and I am armed, but I have no intention of shooting anybody unless I have to. But if I have some group of looters and robbers and rapists come up over the hill, then I'm going to protect my wife. I'm sorry to say it, but that's what's going to happen. So I think that if this is about to happen, you really ought to be thinking. Now, there's some weapons that you might not have ever thought of, and one of them is the Bolo. Now, have you ever heard of a Bolo, Swami?
Oh, yeah.
A Bolo is where you go to, let's say, a sporting goods store, and you get 3 1-ounce lead or steel weights, and you go to a store where you can buy, usually a fishery supply store, but you buy some really strong braided twine, and you cut it about 3 feet long. You put one of these weights on the end of each of the 3 strings, and you tie them together in the middle. So now, when you swing it over your head, you have a 3-foot radius string with weights on it. And if you put your fingers between the strings, you can have them so that they're not all on one side of the circle. And you spin it and you spin it, and you can practice this, and practice it with a tree or a pole, and you let it go, and it goes out straight at the pole, and the weights wrap around with string and completely tie up the tree. Now, you could do that with a flock of ducks, and you might be able to bring down 3 or 4 ducks with one time. So you could put a fourth string on there that's 200 feet long and tie that around your waist. So if you didn't catch anything, you can just pull it back. But I've been looking at this drone problem, and a lot of people are really upset with these drones. But wouldn't it be wonderful if everybody had a Bolo in their pocket, which is, it's not a firearm, but it will stop, one person, but it certainly will stop a drone. If you get really good at this, and you have a drone coming over your property, you can just swing this up and bring that thing right down. That sucker's not going to fly any further. So I don't know if anybody had considered that idea, but anyway, that's something you have to get good at. And then another thing is, like the way David slew Goliath, which is that you take a 2-foot long piece of string and you put a piece of cloth in the middle of it, and you wrap that around a stone, and you swing it over your head. One end of the string has a little loop that goes over your finger. And when you swing it over your head, you let go of the other end. And that rock will come flying out of that little pocket and go straight to where you want it. Well, if you hit something with a 5-ounce rock that's about an inch in diameter like a golf ball, that's going to do some damage. And if you're really good at it, you should be able to put that rock wherever you want, even at a distance of 150 feet. So that's another weapon that you might consider. But there's knives, there's bows and arrows, there's all kinds of things. But
also, I would add this for folks. It's simple, it's cheap, it's legal, and effective. Get yourself a squirt gun, fill it with either ammonia or bleach. You squirt that in someone's face, they will leave you alone.
yeah, exactly. That's a wonderful idea. And try not to mix ammonia and chlorine bleach together, because that forms chlorine gas, which will scar your lungs. But
no, one or the other.
Right. Well, that's the important phrase, is one or the other. But in the right situation, you can mix ammonia and chlorine bleach, and that becomes a highly explosive gas, believe it or not. But anyway, I'm not going to get into further weapons, but with what's coming, people who are in those areas should really be thinking, what am I going to do in this situation? What am I going to do in that situation? And when you have a plan and you're familiar with what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, then you're prepared to defend yourself. And listen, there are a lot of selfish people out there. Now, another thing that's in the news is the International Soccer League. Now, that's really interesting. They just had the re-election of the president today, and he hasn't been charged, but there's 14 others that were charged. Well, when he took over the soccer federation, it was broke, and it had no money. And he figured out, if we license the World Cup soccer games and we license advertisers for it, then we can get a lot of income, and we can use that to build up international soccer in all these countries, particularly Africa and Asia, which did not have viable soccer organizations. And so he built it up to where he's got $400 million a year coming into FIFA, which is the International Soccer, or as they call it, Football Association. Now, some of this money has been used to build headquarters in individual countries in Africa, for instance, where they didn't even have a good stadium. Now they have a good stadium. They have a really nice, shiny, brand new headquarters office. They've got coaches. They've got money for equipment. They've got worldwide experts in winning at soccer, stopping in at the center and teaching the people from that country how to win a good soccer game. So he has turned the World Cup into really big business. Now, the big issue is the next World Cups in, I guess, 2018 and 2022. I guess the first one's going to be in Qatar, and the second one is going to be in Russia. Now, that means a lot to Russia because they're spending $50 billion to get ready for the World Cup in Russia. And this is giving a lot of people jobs. It's building all kinds of sports facilities and apartments and new roads and new infrastructure. So you can see if you get selected for the World Cup, this is big business. So there's a guy who is like second in command in the soccer, and all of a sudden he went to New York and he bought an apartment in Trump Towers. Now you can just imagine how much that cost. Then he bought the apartment next to him in the Trump Towers for his cats. Yes. Then he started buying villas around the world. Then he got the FIFA credit card and he charged $26 million on his FIFA credit card.
Wow.
Now, a lot of people got really upset at that. And so he realized that to keep doing this, he was going to have to start distributing some of this cash. So he, like a great genius that he was, decided to put it all in a bank in Miami and then distribute it to these various officials from Miami. Now, the federal government's been investigating this since 2011, and they went to this guy and they said, how come you just get a salary as a FIFA official? How come you bought 2 apartments in Trump Towers? You've been going out to $1,000 a plate dinners with $3,000 bottles of wine. And you've got all these expensive cars. You've charged $26 million on the FIFA charge account. How are you doing this? Excuse me. So he turned FBI informant. So that's how come the U.S. government went to Switzerland and to their annual meeting and with the Swiss police barged in and arrested 14 FIFA officials on corruption charges. And I guess all of them are being extradited to the United States to stand trial on federal corruption charges, money laundering, tax evasion, the whole ball of wax. Now, the president has not been accused of anything, but everyone in the whole world, and he was just reelected for another 4-year term today. Sepp Blatter is his name, or Blatter. He was just reelected today for another 4 years, but everyone in the world is waiting for the other shoe to drop on who was paying him off. How could he be in charge and all this money's being spent and he didn't notice it? I mean, there was $150 million went through this guy with the 2 apartments in Trump Towers. So if you only have $400 million a year income for the whole world, how come you didn't notice that? And what kind of a leader are you? But he got reelected. So every country, I guess there's 209 of them in the soccer league that play soccer, reelected him. So that's that. But everyone's waiting for the other shoe to drop. Now, I've been discussing this with Nancy Leader, and she does not see any purpose to sports at all. She thinks it's a huge waste of time. And but I know there are many, many people who are entirely devoted to their team in their city, and they spend a lot of time following it. But her advice to everyone is to go out and learn how to garden, and learn how to make your own tools, learn how to make your own clothing, and start getting serious, because there's no time to see your team win the World Cup in 2018 or 2022. Now, Putin has come out and said this is just an attempt by the United States to make sure that the World Cup is not in Russia. And, of course, they've already started construction on $50 billion worth of construction. Now, just to give you an example, Adidas gave a couple $1 million to the International Federation in order to be the clothing sponsor of the World Cup. And by doing that for the last few World Cups, they did last year $2 billion in sportswear for soccer teams. So you see that not all of that money might have come in through licensing with FIFA. It might have come in through bribery of companies who wish to be in on the gravy train. So who knows where this is going to end up. But I felt that it's important that Nancy says, go teach yourself gardening and stop watching the games. So what we have here is basically a battle. This is the end times battle between the good and evil. This is the wealthy versus the poor. And, I mean, somebody's building a $500 million house in Los Angeles. How well is that going to survive the San Andreas quake? But, you know, normal people don't have 2 apartments in Trump Towers. They just don't. I'd really like to know about the cats in the other apartment, because I have 5 cats, but I don't know how I could find out about that. But I do love cats. But those have got to be living in a deluxe lifestyle, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah. So anyway, that's sort of like the update of what's going on. Is this New Madrid fault is about to happen. Now we're at the end of May, and the Operation Jade Helm is supposed to start June 15th and go to September 15th, I think. Is that what it is? Or July 15th, June 15th. Anyway, Nancy is not giving any date for the New Madrid fault or the San Andreas, but she said the U.S. Geological Survey told the federal government that all the evidence, including the methane plumes at the Four Corners. Now, you had a lot of other stuff going on. A plane fell 13,000 feet the other day. Both engines went off. Well, that's the electromagnetic disturbance from the tail of Planet X. The movement of the plates is putting a piezoelectric squeeze on the granite, creating an electron flow, which is worse in shallow water. So this plane took off from Singapore. I believe it was an Airbus 330. And, of course, they're the worst because they're all fly-by-computer. They've got motherboards and chips, and they're very easily shorted out through surges and stuff of electromagnetic type. So, and then you have the magnetosphere being disturbed by the static electricity from the tail of Planet X. So you have this overhead, and what you do is you get these invisible lightning bolts that come down from the sky and short out airplanes. So the pilot takes off from Singapore. He gets up to cruising altitude, I guess about 35,000 feet. All of a sudden, both engines go out. The plane plummets like a rock, 13,000 feet, and somehow, I mean, God was with him, is one way of looking at it. The pilot was able to restart both engines. So now he lands, and the airline decides not to tell anybody about it, except that, of course, they had a plane full of passengers, and it got out. Then they admitted that happened. So the normal tactic is to blame the pilot. Pilot error. Couldn't be Planet X. What Planet X? Couldn't be the magnetized tail. What tail? Couldn't be the piezoelectric effect in the shallow water of the South China Sea. What piezoelectric effect? It's got to be the pilot's fault. Well, they had 2 trains crash in South Africa, and they both went nuts. The first one, the engineer was going along, and he goes, there's supposed to be a red stop signal up ahead, and it's not on, it's out. He goes, now what am I supposed to do? So he calls up the railroad, and he goes, I just went by a signal that I thought was supposed to be on, and it wasn't on. What do I do now? While he's doing that, the train speeds up, and he goes, now the train's speeding up on its own. Oh, now it's crashing. So they can't blame the engineer for that one either, because he was on the phone with the railroad. So you would think that when more and more of these things happen, I just had a guy come up here and he goes, my GPS, I punched in your address, and my GPS made me take a right turn, and I ended up in the woods, and I was barely able to turn my truck around. And I'm like, you can't count on the GPS anymore. The Earth is wobbling like crazy. So, the satellites presume that the same place on Earth is always below the satellite, because they're stationary. They're 23,000 miles out. They're always above the... I don't know if many people know that, but that's what stationary communication satellites do, is they stay 23,000 miles out, and as the Earth moves, they stay above the same spot. So you could tie a string from the satellite to your house, and it would still be there every day in the same angle, the same place every day. But now the Earth is wobbling, and the Earth is wobbling because Planet X is making it wobble. The north pole of Planet X is pointed at the Earth, and it's pulling the iron bar in the mid-Atlantic down at the same time as the Earth turns and the Atlantic is not facing the sun anymore. It pushes the North Pole back. So, now the other day, I've got the Naval Observatory sunrise times, okay? This last week, the sun was supposed to rise at 5:10, and I'm laying on the couch watching the news at 20 minutes to 5. In other words, half an hour before sunrise. And what happens? The sun comes over the horizon and a bright beam of sunlight hits me right in the face. Now, this is the kind of stuff that you at your house could be noticing, but you're likely not noticing it. Stuff is going on all around you, and you live in a little box. It's like, move along, little doggy. Don't take any notice. Just move along. Go back to sleep. Don't worry about it. We'll let you know if there's anything you should worry about. But this is stuff, you think I'm making this up, or you think, well, this couldn't possibly be true. This is stuff you can do yourself. Go out and take a picture of the sun the next clear day. Well, I realize some of you never have a clear day because of chemtrails. But the thing is, if you can do it, do it. Now, check the times of sunrise and sunset. Sunset has been much later than normal. Well, why is that? Now sit there facing your computer screen and lean your head in towards the screen. Then lean to the left, and as you lean to the left, move your head further away from the computer screen until you're sitting straight up again, but now your head is farther from the computer. Now lean to the right, and as you lean to the right, bring your head back towards the screen. That's what the wobble is. Your head is the North Pole of Earth, and that's what the wobble is doing every single day. So as you come back, that's when Planet X is pulling the Great Iron Bar, which is the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, down towards the sun. And as you lean back to the left and end up straight up and down, but further from it, that's when you get the North Pole of Planet X, which is pointed at the equator of the Earth like a flashlight. That's when it pushes the North Pole of Earth further back. Now, some of you might be aware that there was, and it's a hoax, I'm going to start right out by saying that the administrator of NASA said in 2014 that there were going to be 6 days of darkness in December of 2014. Then it hit the internet this last week that the administrator of NASA, Golden, which he retired, so he isn't even the administrator. So right there, that should be a clue this isn't true. But he said there's going to be 6 days of darkness in June of 2015. I'm telling you that will not happen. What is going to happen just before a pole shift is that people are saying the North Pole of Earth will be pointed away from the sun, and that will make the whole northern hemisphere be in darkness. But I've discussed this with Nancy Leader quite a bit, and what's going to happen is the sun is going to lean to the left, but it's still going to be rotating. So the Earth is. So as the Earth leans to the left and rotates, it's like the sun will be over the equator, but the Earth will still be turning. So there will be normal daylight and darkness, but the sun will appear to rise in the west. Have you got me so far? Things are going to be different. If you're not noticing where the sun rises and it rises in the west, you're not going to be clued in, are you? It's like watching a Jack Nicholson movie where his wife took him to counseling, and she goes to the counselor, she goes, he's not plugged in. He's not plugged in. So you're not plugged in if you aren't noticing this stuff. This is what you have to do. Now, some of you have heard that there are huge sounds, it's in the Bible, it's in the Quran, of trumpets at the end times. Now, if you go on YouTube and you look for unusual sounds, you will see that there are many videos of mind-boggling unusual sounds. Like in Kiev, there was a sound like being in the New York City subway, which some of you have done and others haven't. If you're in the subway in New York, all you hear is screeching metal against metal as the subway goes around a curve and stuff like that. But there isn't anything like that going on in Kiev, and it's just somebody was on the balcony of their apartment building with a video camera, and they heard this sound and they recorded it. Then there was a Red Sox and Tampa Bay Rays baseball game in Tampa in the dome, and all of a sudden the announcer goes, "What's that?" And it's the eeriest sound. And what's happening is that with all this movement of the plates, the little fingers that attach the plates to the core are breaking off. And in some cases, have you ever played different musical notes with wine glasses? You fill them with water to different heights, and then you can take your finger and wet it and run it around the rim of the glass, and it sings. That's what some of this energy is ending up sounding like, is like singing wine glasses. Only it's the crust of the earth. And then there's all kinds of booms and shudders and all this stuff. So you really should, if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, I'm going to try and record some of them and play them on next week's show so you can hear how unearthly these sounds are. But it's right there in the book of Revelation. It's right there in the Koran, and it's in a lot of other prophetic things, that there will be these trumpets of the end times. So wouldn't that be interesting to hear that for those of you who haven't?
Oh, well, not long ago on John B. Wells' Caravan to Midnight show, Linda Moulton Howe was on there with probably a half a dozen different audio clips of people recording stuff, and it's just coming from nowhere. An enormous sound level.
Right. Some people think it's from the sky. Some people think it's from the ground. Some people think it's from the neighborhood one street over. They don't know, but it's ringing out and encompassing wherever you are. Even if you're in the forest of Canada, there have been these sounds recorded, and they're just unbelievable. So you heard them. What did you think?
Oh, yeah. It's without a doubt. Something is occurring. Something is causing the sound. But no one, who recorded these things, you hear them discussing, what is that? Where's it coming from? It sounds like it's coming out of the sky. Or it sounds like it's coming out of the ground. But there's nothing around them to account for it. And people call the police departments and 911 and, all that sort of stuff. And these things are happening without any doubt whatsoever. They've got the proof with the recordings, and it's disturbing.
Yeah, I'd say it's disturbing. Well, it's the end of the world. What do you expect, God. Of course that's disturbing. But it isn't the end of the world. It's the beginning of the new world. That's difference. Now, I have some big news to tell you. There's a famous business consultant expert who's also works with politicians, named Josh Tolley, Tolley. He has a show on, I think it's 7 in the morning in Los Angeles, and it's 10 in the morning in the East Coast. But it's on 160 broadcast in 160 nations around the world. It's broadcast radio. Now, actually, there's no station in Maine, so if you're in Maine, you would have to go online to Genesis Communication and to listen to the internet stream of the show. But he's been on CNN with Larry King moderating presidential debates, and he's a famous business advisor. He claims that he's in the top 100 of all business advisors in the world. And he's friends with that guy, Tony Robbins, who most of you have probably seen an ad on TV at one time or other about Tony Robbins. Materialize your wealth, materialize what you want out of life. All this positive thinking about materialization. So this guy contacts Janet and me and says, would you like to be on my show? So Janet and I wrote him back and go, do you know what we talk about? Do you have any idea? Do you really think that the businessmen and the politicians that listen to you as they drive to work in the morning are going to want to hear what Janet and I are going to say about Planet X, pole shift, dimensional graduation, extraterrestrials, and the universe? And So the producer wrote back, and then she ended up calling me up, and she goes, "We know exactly what you say because we listen to Coast to Coast. When we ask our audience, and the audience is 7 million people every day, supposedly, worldwide, 160 nations. We ask our audience, what would they like to hear the most? What subject would they like to hear the most? They always write back and say UFOs, extraterrestrials, and the future. And they go, so we can't wait to have you and Janet on. So I want to tell everyone, write this down. I'm going to be on the Josh Tolley Show, Tolley, on Friday, June 19th at 10:15 in the morning. The show it goes 2 hours from 10 to 12. And they have an introductory thing, and then he introduces the guest at 10:15 Eastern time. So that means 7:15 LA time. And I guess he's got radio stations around the world, 160 nations that listen to his program. And most of those people are businessmen. I said, "Do you really want me to be telling these businessmen and politicians that now's the time to make a conscious choice to be unselfish?" And they said, "We would love it." So there you go. This is really big. I mean, this could grow to be something else, getting in with that crowd. So I think it's quite a compliment. And, I didn't arrange it in any way. They sought me out. So I think that's big news, don't you, Swami?
Yes. Congratulations, and I hope you guys enjoy the visit.
Yeah, so that's 3 Fridays from now. Yeah, 3 Fridays from now. So, and then they posted on YouTube, and then he said some of his YouTubes get 250,000 viewers in the first 5 days.
Wow.
So this is really exciting. So I can't wait to, I have no idea who his audience is, but if they're all straight businessmen and politicians. He was on, I think I just said that, but he was on CNN with Larry King moderating a presidential debate. So this guy is pretty well connected in the straight business world and the political world. So I can just imagine, I hope that there will be some people who really can make a difference listening to that show and following it. Because, there's no messing around now. Last year was like a lull. 2013 was like a lull. All this stuff is supposed to start happening, but it didn't seem like any of it was happening. Then it seems that the billionaires want to build spaceships and go into space and leave the Earth and come back as kings after pole shift. And then the Council of Worlds said, through the Zetas, through Nancy Lieder, that it's war. They know exactly what people have been thinking, what they said 30 years ago when they thought nobody was listening. They have recordings of it, and they're going to expose all this stuff. So you wonder, is that why the Dennis Hasset thing is coming out? Is this why the FIFA thing is coming out? It says that at the end times there will be no secrets. So if you're one of those selfish people who's going around taking advantage of the situation, and you think that because you haven't been caught, you got away with it, you're very wrong. Really very wrong. And there's still time. But like Janet says, the bus is running. Are you going to be on it or not? So you want to choose selfishness and violence and fear and anger, or do you want to choose love and compassion? If you're in the love and compassionate mode, you're an eternal soul. Does it matter if you die? No, it doesn't, because you're not going anywhere. All that makes you special, your talents, your skills, your sense of humor, your experience, all that makes you a unique soul, and no soul is ever lost. So, if you want to be scared and be afraid and say, well, this is the end, I'm going to get into an angry mode, I'm going to take advantage of other people. If there's only one scrap of bread and there's another guy sitting there, are you going to say, you have it, it's yours, or are you going to punch him in the face, grab the bread and run away? This is the final exam for graduation. And it doesn't matter to anybody except your soul if you get it wrong. because you're the one who's going to have to relive this same soap opera over and over and over again until you get it right. But you have a chance right now, a unique chance to get it right this time, at this point in the world. And so I think, personally, I think this is the single most exciting time to live. I mean, Swami was asking me the other day, did I get a sudden cold feeling going down my spine when I realized this was going to happen? And I said no, because I always thought it was going to happen, because I was reading Edgar Cayce's prophecies. That was when I learned to read at age 7, which I was a late reader, but then I devoured the stuff. So we can talk a little bit about that next week. But thank you, everyone. Thank you, Swami.